Og ute i Borggården i Oslo sentrum utenfor rådhuset ser vi nå bilene ankomme fra slottet. Det kongeparet og kronprinsparet som ankommer, alltid som de siste gjestene til Nobelseremonien. De blir her tatt imot, ser vi blant annet av ordfører i Oslo, Marianne Borgen. Og her det kronprins Håkon og kronprinsesse Mette-Marit som kommer ut av bilen. Og her har vi kong Harald og dronning Sonja som ønskes velkommen. Rett på innsiden av dørene venter fredsprisvinnerne som snart skal gå inn og ta sine plasser i rådhuset. Den røde løper har ventet lenge, og nå skal det blåses. Ser vi belarusiske nobelprisvinneren Ales Bialskis kone Natalia Pinchuk sammen med nestleder i komiteen Asle Toje. Bak ser vi styrelederen for russiske Memorial Jan Rečinski sammen med komitémedlem Anne Enger, deretter styrelederen for det ukrainske senteret for sivile rettigheter Oleksandra Matvichuk, som går sammen med komitémedlem Kristin Clemet. Og helt bakerst Jørgen Vatne Frydnes, som også medlem av Nobelkomiteen. Da har de funnet sine plasser og venter nå på podiet, og der blir de stående til kongefamilien kommer inn i salen. Hennes mann får neppe fulgt seremonien fra sin fengselscelle. Da det den andre fanfaren fra Forsvarets stabs musikkorps, og her kommer kong Harald sammen med Nobelkomitéleder Berit Reiss-Andersen, slik tradisjonen og flankert da med Oslos ordfører Marianne Borgen. Bak dem igjen ser vi Nobelkomiteens sekretær Olav Njølstad. Og kronprinsparet bak der igjen, sammen med kongens adjutanter. Og da de fremme ved de 4 stolene som står helt fremst, og hele salen står da og venter. Nobelprisvinnere og de øvrige komitémedlemmene inkludert. Da også Berit Reiss-Andersen, Nobelkomiteens leder, på plass oppe ved podiet. Og hun skal snart gå bort til mikrofonen og holde sin tale til prisvinnerne, men også til verden. Og vi gjør klart for Berit Reiss-Andersen.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, Excellencies, Nobel Peace Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. At this very moment in Stockholm, Nobel Prizes are being presented to this year's Nobel laureates in physiology or medicine, physics, chemistry, and literature, under the provisions of Alfred Nobel's will. All the Nobel Prizes, including the Peace Prize, are interconnected. The vision of Alfred Nobel was one of progress through science and the search for truth and greater knowledge. It was also a vision of profound literature, enlightening and feeding the spirit, and of peace, which is so essential for safety and prosperity. Alfred Nobel's support of science, literature, and peace reflect his conviction that those pursuits were the keys to a better world. At the core of his vision was the belief that talented and committed individuals can make a difference. I have the immense pleasure this year of recognizing Ales Bialyatsky, the organization Memorial, and the Center for Civil Liberties as the champions of peace, who, by different means but for a common goal, have conferred the greatest benefit to humankind. For this, each is being awarded a 1/3 share of the Nobel Peace Prize for 2022. When announcing our decision in October, the Norwegian Nobel Committee emphasized that the 3 laureates have promoted the right to criticize power and protect the fundamental rights of citizens. They have made an outstanding effort to document war crimes, human rights abuses, and abuse of power. Together, they demonstrate the significance of civil society for peace and democracy. A democratic government needs not only the support of its people, but also criticism, new ideas, and new perspectives. Its ultimate source of authority is the people. History teaches us that even suppressed people will at some point defy the oppressor. Somebody will form a movement and speak up for more freedom, justice, democracy, and rule of law. These rights and values are the framework that guarantees every citizen the right to hold an opinion and enjoy freedom of speech and freedom of organization. Our 3 laureates share this conviction. They have a common approach to exposing oppression and perpetrators of war crime. Their method is to systematically collect evidence of past and current human rights violations and war crimes. The purpose is to hold perpetrators accountable, to honor the victims, and to prevent the repetition of atrocities. Reliable evidence is of vital importance, not only for a legal process, but also for historical documentation and moral restoration of the victim's perspective. This brings me to the first of our 3 laureates, Ales Bialyatsky. The Belarusian government has for years tried to silence him. He has been harassed, he has been arrested and jailed, and he has been deprived of employment. Mr. Bialyatsky is by profession a scholar of literature, and words have been his weapon ever since he was one of the initiators of the democracy and human rights movement in Belarus in the 1980s. He is the founder of Vyasna, an organization that initially documented abuse against protesters, but soon developed into a human rights organization. For more than 20 years, Vyasna has documented abuse and torture against activists and political opponents of the dictatorship in Belarus. The organization identifies victims, keeps track of where they are serving sentences, and monitors their treatment. In July 2021, all of Vyasna's offices were searched, and its leaders were arrested. At this moment, our thoughts are with all prisoners of conscience in Belarus, and most particularly, we think of Ales Bialyatsky in his dark and isolated prison cell in Minsk. And Ales, you are not alone. We stand with you, and we thank your wife, Natalia Pinchuk, who will soon receive the gold medal and diploma on your behalf. Mr. Bialyatsky insists that he is not a politician. His role is to promote human rights, democracy, and rule of law, a dangerous task in a dictatorship. He is now facing a possible sentence of 7 to 12 years in prison. The novelist Milan Kundera once wrote, "The struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting." The organization Memorial is dedicated to exactly that, memory. It was established in the late 1980s in the former Soviet Union by, among others, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Andrei Sakharov and the tireless human rights advocate Elena Semskova, who actually is present here today. So, Elena, please rise. Initially, the purpose of Memorial was to document the oppression and atrocities under communist rule, so that these crimes would always be remembered. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, the organization broadened its scope, also documenting human rights abuses as they occurred in Russia. Even though Memorial itself was temporarily tolerated by the government, its members repeatedly suffered repercussions and assaults. As we all remember, Natalia Estemirova, who oversaw the memorial office in Chechnya, was brutally murdered in 2009 while documenting war crimes committed by Russian forces in the Second Chechen War. By classifying legitimate and normal civil society efforts as activities of foreign agents, Russian authorities have given themselves a legal grip on activities not to the government's liking. As a legal entity, Memorial is now history. It was closed down by a court ruling in April 2022. However, the network of former staff members and supporters of the liquidated organization is still active. It is now of paramount importance that Memorial's unique archives of past and current state crimes are preserved for the future. We must also make sure that the main lesson of Memorial's 35-year-long struggle for truth is never be forgotten. By recording the dark chapters of our history, we allow ourselves to learn from the past and prevent mistakes from being repeated. Memorial was determined to tell the true history of abuse, oppression, and war crimes. Such truths, I am sorry to say, are seen as an enemy of state in present-day Russia. We are honored to have the chair of Memorial's board of directors with us here today, Mr. Jan Raczynski, and his slogan is, "Nobody plans to give up." And I turn, finally, to the Center for Civil Liberties in Ukraine, represented on stage by the chair of its board of directors, Alexandra Matvichuk. The Center for Civil Liberties has declared that it wants to reinforce the principle of human dignity. Indeed, a very bold goal. More specifically, it wants to encourage civic activism in support of democracy, human rights, and rule of law. Back in 2007, when the Center for Civil Liberties was established, democracy and rule of law were not fully embedded in Ukraine. The years of newly won independence had seen both gains and setbacks in that respect. When the pro-Russian and increasingly authoritarian regime of former President Viktor Yanukovych cracked down on the peaceful pro-democracy protesters in Kiev's Independence Square in 2013, the Center for Civil Liberties launched its Euromaidan SOS initiative. The initiative had a double aim: documenting the government's human rights violation and providing legal assistance to the victims. The Center also began to monitor the conduct of various government agencies, such as the police and security services, in order to hold them accountable for their actions and encourage institutional reforms. Last but not least, Euromaidan SOS developed interactive maps which made it possible to track and force disappearance of human rights activists, democracy advocates, and investigative journalists. After Viktor Yanukovych was removed from office in February 2014 and Russia carried out its illegal annexation of Crimea, the Center for Civil Liberties turned its attention to the human rights situation there and in the contested Donbas region. As the first human rights group to send mobile monitoring teams into Crimea and Donbas, the Center for Civil Liberties compiled lists of political prisoners and human rights violations that were later exchanged with other national and international human rights watchdogs. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, these mobile monitoring teams were given a new and daunting task: to identify and document war crimes committed by Russian and pro-Russian forces on Ukrainian soil. The Center for Civil Liberties has advocated that Ukraine become affiliated with the International Criminal Court. It has collaborated with international partners to collect evidence of Russian human rights violations and war crimes, thereby paving the ground for future legal processes against the war criminals. Through its work today, Center for Civil Liberties is preparing for peace and justice tomorrow. One day, when hostilities have ceased, Ukraine will continue its efforts to develop democracy and rule of law. The Center for Civil Liberties intends to be at the forefront in that process. The Norwegian Nobel Committee firmly believes that this year's 3 Peace Prize laureates represent the vital role played by civil society in achieving and maintaining peace. In Oslo and in Stockholm, we meet today to celebrate all the Nobel Prizes. We meet at a time when democracy and freedom are in decline globally, and when there is a brutal war of aggression in Europe with disruptive global effects. In the face of this multitude of crises and challenges, the world needs dedicated scientists and people who relentlessly seek the truth and push the boundaries for our knowledge. And the world needs those admirable individuals and groups of people who at great personal sacrifice challenge repressive authorities and stand up against aggression in pursuit of democracy, human rights, and peace. The Norwegian Nobel Committee is proud to honor Ales Bialiatski Memorial and the Center for Civil Liberties for their contributions to peace and human dignity at these very troubling times. Thank you.
Komiteens begrunnelse gitt, og Nobelkomiteens leder skal snart kalle frem prisvinnerne eller deres representanter for å gi dem deres respektive diplomer og medaljer.
I ask all the Nobel laureates to come forward and, on behalf of the person they represent, the organization they represent, to receive the diploma and gold medal.
Harald V of konen til Ales Bialiatski. Så russiske memorial og ukrainske senter for sivile rettigheter. Og mens applausen runger i rådhussalen, fotograferes de 3 prisvinnerne. Bilder som kommer til å gå verden rundt via forskjellige nyhetsbyråer. Og vi nærmer oss slutten på seremonien vi nå. Det kun de siste formalitetene som skal gjøres, hvor den kongelige familie skal gratulere prisvinnerne. Også Nobelkomiteens medlemmer hilses på av de kongelige. Og nå når kronprinsparet har hilst på både Nobelkomiteens medlemmer og sekretær, så gjøres det klart for utgang fra rådhuset. Igjen det Forsvarets stabsmusikkorps som spiller parademarsj. Kongefamilien forlater rådhuset først, sammen med Nobelkomiteens leder og direktøren ved Nobelinstituttet. Vi hører også klokkespillet i Oslo rådhus.